He spent years in the spotlight, known for his sharp judgment and unshakable confidence, a man who could make or break dreams with just a glance. But away from the cameras, Simon Cowell was living a very different story. In a single moment, the world's most composed television figure wasn't the producer or the critic anymore. He was simply a father, facing news no parent is ever prepared to hear. From that day on, the auditions, the flashing lights, even the global success, none of it held the same meaning. Without warning, he stepped away, leaving colleagues shocked and millions of fans questioning what had happened. What really went on when the cameras stopped rolling? And what pushed Simon to walk away at the peak of his career? We uncover the moment that brought him to his breaking point, and the emotional goodbye that changed everything. When fatherhood took over the spotlight. For years, Simon Cowell lived for the spotlight. He became famous for his tough judging style, leading some of the biggest shows like American Idol, The X Factor, and Britain's Got Talent. His life was all about work, late nights, tight schedules, and constant travel. Success came first. Everything else came second. But in 2013, something happened that changed his life in ways he never expected. Simon began a private relationship with Lauren Silverman, who at the time was married to his friend, Andrew Silverman. When Andrew filed for divorce and named Simon in the case, the story exploded across the media. Headlines were no longer about the shows. This time, they were about him. Then the situation took an even bigger turn. Lauren was pregnant with Simon's child. The divorce was settled privately in August, and Simon avoided appearing in court. Shortly after, he confirmed he was going to be a father. And on February 14, 2014, his son was born. That moment changed him. Parenthood arrived unexpectedly. Simon had always pictured a life devoted to work and the stage, not lullabies and bedtime stories. Yet the moment he saw his son on the ultrasound, priorities shifted. Eric Philip Cowell, named in honor of Simon's late father, became the center of a new, profound responsibility. From the start, Simon set clear intentions. Fame would not shield Eric from reality. He wanted a grounded childhood, free from privilege and spectacle. The man accustomed to controlling every set, every spotlight, now had to surrender to a role that demanded patience, love, and humility. Being a father. As Eric grew, Simon Cowell's world began to change in ways no one could see. The relentless rhythm of TV studios, endless deals, and flashing cameras slowly gave way to bedtime stories, school drop-offs, and quiet playtimes. Work was still part of his life, but it was no longer the center of it. For the first time, he made choices based on his son, not his empire. Simon had always noticed details others missed. That skill that made him a television icon now became a lens for fatherhood. Little things Eric did started to stand out. The way he reacted to noise, the pauses in his speech, the quiet observation of his surroundings. At first, Simon told himself it was normal. Children grow at different paces. But a quiet unease began to take root, discovering a new kind of fatherhood. By Eric's second birthday, Simon realized his son still hadn't begun speaking in full words, a milestone most children his age had reached. When the world seemed too loud, Eric would cover his ears or look away. At first, Simon assumed it was sensitivity, but patterns repeated, and the little signs began to weigh heavily on him. Something about Eric's world felt different, and Simon's instincts, honed over decades of reading people, refused to ignore it. Instead of retreating, Simon leaned in. Every small gesture became meaningful, a glance, a hand movement, a subtle response that hinted at Eric's sharp mind. He started researching child development, seeking guidance wherever he could find it, trying to understand his son's perspective. What he discovered was a child who processed the world differently, moving at his own rhythm, observing more than he spoke. Even in public, Simon's protective instincts were evident. Moments like Eric pressing the golden buzzer on Britain's Got Talent weren't just adorable clips. They were carefully planned opportunities for Eric to engage safely, without feeling overwhelmed. The world saw a heartwarming father-son moment. Simon saw a triumph that required patience, understanding, and love. For Simon, the loud applause of the stage was no longer the goal. It was replaced by subtle victories at home, a shared look, a small sound, a connection that confirmed Eric's growth. Every day became about nurturing his son's unique path, creating a life where Eric could thrive at his own pace. As the signs became clearer, Simon and Lauren realized that observing from a distance was no longer enough. They needed professional guidance to truly understand Eric's needs. This decision marked the next chapter of their journey, one that would combine love, patience, and expert support. In these quiet, carefully observed moments, Simon discovered a new side of himself, a father willing to step back from fame, to slow down, to truly see and support his child. And he knew that this was only the beginning of a journey that would test his heart, his patience, and his love in ways the spotlight had never done before. Simon Cowell had spent decades controlling the chaos of show business. But at home with his son Eric, the rules were different. He began shaping the world around Eric, softening lights, reducing noise, surrounding him with only familiar faces. Every choice was deliberate, based on months of careful observation. What the media noticed was a softer Simon, a gentler side emerging in public appearances. But behind the headlines, the change ran much deeper. Simon wasn't just being protective. He was completely reorganizing his life around his child. Work offers that would keep him away were turned down. Long hours, once devoted to television deals, now made room for playtime, bedtime, and school routines. Some dismissed it as a new father phase, expecting him to snap back to his old life. But this wasn't temporary. Simon had discovered a world where patience, understanding, and empathy mattered more than ratings or deals. He focused entirely on Eric's needs, learning his rhythms, noticing small reactions, and adjusting carefully. Even in public, Eric's differences caught attention. On rare appearances, like pressing the golden buzzer on Britain's Got Talent, fans saw a touching father-son moment, but every detail had been carefully planned to keep Eric comfortable. The applause was for the audience. The victory was private, measured in small smiles and steady breaths. Simon also sought guidance beyond instinct. He reached out to specialists, read extensively, and learned everything he could about child development. Some answers brought hope, some more questions, but he pressed on, determined to support Eric in the right way, building a safe world for Eric. Then, during what was meant to be a relaxing family vacation when Eric was 4, Simon noticed something he could no longer ignore. The busy resort, the unfamiliar routines, the loud noises. It all overwhelmed Eric. He covered his ears, rocked in his chair, and withdrew into himself. No comfort worked. That night, Simon and Lauren realized they couldn't wait any longer. They needed expert help to understand and support their son properly. Months of careful observation and assessments followed. Specialists studied Eric, asking questions, noting behaviors, and testing responses. Then, in December 2018, Simon received the official news. Eric was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. The words didn't shock him. He had sensed it, but hearing them made it real. It wasn't a theory anymore. It was fact. Eric's mind worked differently, but that difference was not a deficit. He struggled with speech, certain sounds, and changes in routine. But he also saw patterns others missed, remembered sequences effortlessly, and focused deeply on things that interested him. Hearing the words out loud made everything real, but also gave Simon clarity. He could finally understand why certain situations had been difficult for Eric and what steps he could take to create a nurturing, structured environment. For Simon, the diagnosis wasn't about fixing Eric. It was about adapting the world around him. His goal became creating an environment where Eric could thrive, safely and confidently, on his own terms. And as Simon watched his son meticulously line up toy cars on the floor, a calm clarity washed over him. Eric wasn't broken. He wasn't missing anything. He was simply different, a unique mind with its own rhythm, its own beauty, and a quiet brilliance that no diagnosis could ever diminish. The diagnosis gave Simon answers he had been seeking without even realizing it. Looking back, he understood why he had avoided noisy events, controlled schedules, and stayed close to Eric at every turn. His instincts had been guiding him all along. Now everything became clear. Eric needed support every day, speech therapy to help him communicate, occupational therapy to manage movement and touch, and guidance to handle daily challenges. Simon had to step into a completely new role as a parent, learning methods, asking questions, and building routines around his son's needs. The life Simon once knew, full of travel, TV deals, and late nights, took a back seat. His days now revolved around Eric. Structure replaced unpredictability. Every small detail mattered: meals, therapy sessions, playtime, even visits with friends. Each moment was planned to make Eric feel safe and calm. At their Malibu home, Simon made changes everywhere. Lights were softened, noises lowered, and furniture arranged to create comfort. Every space had a purpose, every detail considered. Their home became a sanctuary where Eric could relax and be himself. Days were carefully organized. Mornings often started with speech exercises, afternoons with occupational therapy, evenings with quiet routines. Playdates looked simple on the outside, but Simon had thought through every possible challenge to prevent Eric from feeling overwhelmed. Slowly, he learned to understand his son through gestures, looks, and small actions, without needing words. It wasn't always easy. Simon felt a quiet sadness for the childhood he had imagined. Road trips, playful jokes, easy conversations. But he also discovered a new kind of connection. A glance, a tiny smile, or a gentle touch became moments of joy. Therapy brought challenges, but also victories. Simon watched Eric struggle to make sounds, focus, or handle new sensations, but each small success mattered. He realized fatherhood wasn't about recreating a typical childhood. It was about creating a world where Eric could thrive, in his own way, with love, patience, and careful planning guiding every step. These small, personal victories taught Simon the value of patience and careful planning, and soon, every choice he made, both at home and in public, was influenced by Eric's comfort and well-being. Each breakthrough with Eric, his first word, a shared glance, a tender hug, was a quiet triumph. To nurture these moments, Simon rearranged his world, declining high-profile projects, delegating responsibilities, and carefully planning every day around his son's comfort. The weight of these choices was heavy, and solitude sometimes accompanied him, but every decision was a step toward creating a secure, loving environment where Eric could flourish. Simon didn't feel sad because Eric was different. What worried him was the world outside, a world that might not see Eric for who he truly was. People could judge or misunderstand him. Simon's goal became clear: create a safe, loving world where Eric could grow strong, no matter what anyone else thought. While Simon focused on creating a safe and loving home, he knew that the outside world might not understand Eric's differences. Slowly, he began considering how to educate others without compromising his son's privacy. By 2019, public attention added a new challenge. Rumors about Eric started online and slowly spread. People made assumptions, often from ignorance. Some were kind, but many misunderstood autism. Simon saw strangers judging his son, and it hurt. Then one day, a tabloid went too far. They published pictures of Eric in a noisy, overwhelming situation and twisted it into something to laugh at. That was the moment Simon knew he had to speak up. He released a simple message. He said Eric had autism and asked for respect and understanding. He reminded people that Eric was loved, happy, and thriving, just living life in his own way. It was a small statement, but it changed everything. Simon had found a way to protect Eric while letting the world understand him. From that day on, his focus wasn't just on fame or work. It was on guiding his son through a world that didn't always understand him. Simon's message about Eric's autism reached far and wide. Parents of autistic children wrote to thank him. Advocacy groups reached out. Fans showed love and support. For a moment, it felt like hope. But the attention came with challenges. Every time Eric went out in public, people watched closely. Every smile, every move, every pause was analyzed. Simon had hoped to clear up misunderstandings, but instead, the truth brought new pressure. News outlets turned Eric into headlines, and strangers acted like they knew his life better than anyone else. Simon had to protect Eric while also helping the public understand autism. He spoke at events and gave careful interviews, sharing the importance of early support, kindness, and patience. He explained that autism doesn't stop a child from growing, learning, or succeeding, but he always kept Eric's personal story private. What hurt the most was seeing some people treat Eric's autism as a problem rather than just a difference. Yet there were bright spots. Parents said Simon's honesty gave them hope. Advocates thanked him for using his fame for good. Teachers and therapists felt encouraged. These moments reminded Simon that speaking out could make a real difference. Redefining dreams, daily victories, and a bond beyond words. Through it all, Simon focused on building a safe, loving world for Eric. A world where his son could grow strong, even if the rest of the world didn't understand. Through these challenges, Simon realized that fatherhood was teaching him lessons no TV stage ever could. His dreams for Eric had to evolve, shaped by understanding and celebrating the child in front of him, not the one he had imagined. As time passed, Simon began to change his idea of fatherhood. He wasn't losing Eric, but he was letting go of the childhood he had imagined. He had pictured teaching Eric to ride a bike, hearing stories about school, or sharing simple, everyday moments. Those dreams had once felt easy. Now, fatherhood was different. It wasn't about following a script. It was about learning, adapting, and finding joy in the small victories. Each new word, each moment of understanding, each tiny success became more important than the plans he had once pictured. Simon was learning that being a father meant protecting, guiding, and celebrating his son exactly as he was, even if the world didn't always understand. Eric's diagnosis reshaped Simon's vision of fatherhood. The familiar roadmap he had imagined vanished, replaced by uncharted territory filled with daily lessons. He learned to see the world through Eric's eyes, navigating challenges that many take for granted, like overstimulation from noise or the struggle to express thoughts and feelings. This new perspective required flexibility, empathy, and unwavering attention. Even the world Simon loved, the bright lights, talent shows, and stages, felt distant. He realized how many gifted kids never got a chance simply because the world wasn't built for them. Everything he had once taken for granted now needed careful planning. His old lifestyle vanished. Spontaneous trips, last-minute events, or simply going wherever he wanted became impossible. Every outing had to be prepared around Eric's comfort. Loud noises, crowded places, and long days could overwhelm him, and Simon had to stay one step ahead at all times. Invitations he once would have accepted were now turned down. Even simple activities like a restaurant visit or a short flight required careful thought. It was challenging, but he adjusted. The hardest part was letting go of the childhood he had imagined for Eric. Simon had pictured milestones coming easily, playful moments, simple achievements, and carefree father-son days. That path was now full of obstacles, but the dreams didn't disappear. They just changed. Simon began to see Eric's unique strengths: focus, attention to detail, and his own special way of understanding the world. Every small victory became a milestone, every moment of progress a celebration. People close to Simon noticed the change. He spoke less, kept to himself, and sometimes seemed distant. There was a quiet sadness, not for love, but for the moments he had assumed would come easily: birthdays with friends, spontaneous chats, or hearing Eric call out naturally. Even school events, where other parents smiled effortlessly, were different. Behind Simon's applause and smiles were countless hours of therapy, patient guidance, and careful observation. Every achievement Eric made was the result of effort, love, and attention, not just for him, but for the father, learning a whole new way to guide his son. Simon's life had shifted completely. Fame, travel, and the world of entertainment were no longer the focus. Every decision, every plan, every moment revolved around Eric. Slowly, Simon learned that being a parent wasn't about recreating a perfect childhood. It was about understanding, adapting, and finding joy in the victories that came in new and unexpected ways. Simon discovered something even more profound about fatherhood. His bond with Eric didn't rely on words or traditional milestones. It grew through quiet moments, shared glances, and small gestures that spoke volumes. Each day brought a deeper understanding, a connection built on patience, love, and trust. Simon's journey with Eric is a story of transformation, where fame, success, and control gave way to love, patience, and a deeper understanding of what truly matters. By setting aside the expectations he once held, Simon opened the door to new dreams, ones shaped not by the world's standards, but by Eric's unique strengths and the journey they were sharing. In the end, it wasn't about what he had planned, but about what they were building together, step by step, moment by moment, in a world they were learning to navigate side by side. What do you think about Simon's journey and the sacrifices he's made for his son? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your perspective.